doing. We love to because our community is a church and we're focused on our mission being loving our neighbors in the way of Jesus. We love to tell a story from Jesus' life and ask what difference that makes in our life. We love to tell stories about that hopefully spark some conversation around the table. So if you are kind of getting nervous and your radar's getting up, there's no high pressure here. We just love to tell stories and we love to try to create genuine spaces of conversation around the table. But we'd understand if you're not comfortable with that. We completely understand. So my LaCroix question. I loved it at my table. Someone said, I thought that was a band, which is great. It was probably says what team they're on with LaCroix. How many Team LaCroix people or similar off-brands, Waterloo, otherwise, all right? How many, I don't know what that is, or I know what that is, and I'm definitely not on that team. Nice. All right. I like it. So I'm kind of on both, and let me explain why. We have LaCroix in our house. Maybe I will by the time this is done. I'm kind of leaning off the team, and I'll tell you why. My behavior would put me on the team. My response to when I drink a LaCroix would put me off the team. So I'm very torn between the two. So I'll take a LaCroix from the fridge, which for those of you who aren't familiar, it's just like a carbonated water, lightly flavored thing. And I'll take it after, for instance, right now I'm building a new fence at my house. After I'm parched, and I'll take it and I'll start drinking it. And inevitably, it happens every single time. I'll set it down somewhere and I'll return to it. And I'll pick it up, and there's just a little bit left in it. And I immediately start blaming everyone around me. I'm like, Christian Ann, did you drink this? Kids who got into they call it spicy water. Who got into my spicy water? But every single time, with a few exceptions, I'll say, every single time, it's me who's been doing all the drinking. And I just drink them really fast. And I always get to the end of the LaCroix, and I'm like a little bit unsatisfied. It feels like it kind of gave me the refreshment I needed right away, but then I either have to drink another one or just move right on to what I really should be drinking, which is water. I don't know if you've had that experience before with different kinds of food or if you've had that experience with LaCroix. That's my only beef with it, that I feel like I got to crush 3 of them for them to make a meaningful difference. But then I'm just burping all the rest of the day, so it doesn't really work out. That's a trivial example, but one of the things I've noticed in my life is there's kind of LaCroix type things in my life. And I don't mean things that either separate us, whether we're pros or cons towards them. I mean things that I pursue and work for or consume in my life, and I am hopeful for a certain degree of satisfaction from them. And sometimes they start off to be super refreshing, but then when I get to the bottom of the can of what I'm experiencing, or after I experience it, I'm left wanting more. Or I'm left noticing that my desire that I was hoping for didn't get fulfilled with that thing that I thought it would. This sometimes, if it repeats in my life, kind of creates 2 ditches, if you will, down the road. If I kind of continually invest in things with my life or work towards things that I'm hoping for satisfaction, and then I experience discontent, I'll either go down this ditch of apathy, where I just stop caring about some things in my life, and I'm like, is it even worth pursuing? And I just reach for the easiest things in my life to fulfill, to make me feel good in the moment, or to entertain me or something like that, and I can stoop into this kind of state of apathy. The other one is, who likes Scrabble or Wordle or something like that? No one in this audience. Great. Okay, some hesitant Wordle fans, hesitant Scrabble fans. Here's a Scrabble word for you. Avarice. Have you heard the word avarice? It's a word for greed, or avarice. Sorry, I pronounced that wrong. Avarice. Have you heard that word?
Oh, yeah. The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Is it really? It's from the Muppet Christmas Carol. There you go.
With the Marley and Marley.
Yes. There you go. If in my pursuit of satisfaction, I reach disappointment over and over again, one of the ditches is apathy that I can fall into, but one of them is avarice. And that is a compulsive, it's sometimes understood as greed, but it's a chronic discontentment and a consumption for something. And it strikes me that the world that we swim in a lot is full of those two things. Either full of apathy, like who cares anymore, I'm just going to do what feels good, or just this insatiable desire for more and more and more. I don't know if you have found yourself falling in one of those two categories before in your life. I know that I do sometimes, and that informs my decision making and behavior. And it raises a very crucial question, and a question that I want to just submit for conversation around the tables or something maybe for you to walk with through this week. And it raises the question in my life when I notice these things: where is my source of satisfaction? Where am I hoping to get satisfaction from in my life? Where are the sources in my life? Where am I putting work and effort and desire and my energy towards? What sources of satisfaction am I hoping for? What person, place, or thing are we working to achieve satisfaction through? The story I want to share tonight from Jesus' life, I think, speaks to either these two ditches or that question that I think is really crucial in our lives, where we're hoping to draw satisfaction from. This comes from the book of John, which is a gospel in the Bible, and it's stories of Jesus' life. And this part of that story that we're going to read today is almost like an addition to a story that you might have heard of before, and that is when Jesus miraculously feeds 5,000 plus people out in the wilderness. So the passage that I'm going to read today comes directly after Jesus has miraculously turned 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread into feeding these multitudes of people. It's this well-known miracle. But did you know that after that happens, Jesus runs and hides from those people? Did you know that he kind of skips the crowd and they wake up in the morning and they're like, dude, where did Jesus go? He kind of just leaves. And then what happens next is there's a story smashed between, but essentially the people who are there, who ate that actual food and did those actual saw that actual miracle, got in their boats and they started looking for Jesus. And this is where we're picking up the story. And I want you to pay attention to something Jesus says. This summer we're talking about who Jesus is, who Jesus says he is, and who he is to us, how we experience him. And Jesus says a phrase in here that says something about who he is. In verse 25, it says this: when they found him, that mob of people that was looking for him after this, when they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, Rabbi, which means teacher, when did you get here? They're kind of like, how did you get over here? Jesus answered, very truly, I tell you. Of course, here's a Jesus response here. He doesn't answer the question directly, but more meaningfully. Jesus answered, very truly, I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and you were filled. Ooh, that's kind of a dig. Like you're looking for more food here. Do not work for food that spoils. This is something really meaningful, Jesus says. Do not look for food that spoils, but for food that endures. Endures into eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed the seal of approval. I think I missed some verses there. I'll keep rolling. Then he asked them, what must we do to do the work God requires? Jesus answered, and this is really important. He said this. Jesus answered, because they're kind of saying, okay, we're here. How can we participate? How do we do the work to participate? He says, the work of God is this, to believe in the one who he has sent. So they asked him, what sign then will you give that we may see it and believe in you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who gives you bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. You can tell they're a little confused because of the way that Jesus is speaking. And honestly, he goes on and on here beyond this. And I'd encourage you to read the chapter and just bring your curiosity and wonder what Jesus is saying here. But they ask him, they say, "Sir, always give us this bread." They're like, "This bread from heaven, we want that. We want nourishment and satisfaction. We want that. Give it to us." And then Jesus declares, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never grow hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." So, who are these people? I asked you earlier, where is your source of satisfaction? When we look at these people in the story who are having this conversation with Jesus, who just experienced this miracle of being fed, how would they answer those questions? Now, that last line about Jesus saying you'll never go thirsty and never go hungry, I believe in Jesus, and I've been hungry and thirsty before. So clearly he was talking about something much deeper. What was Jesus referring to? What does it mean for him to be the bread of life? I think this stirs up these questions, and though we might not be able to answer them all here tonight, this is why we love to tell Jesus stories, because it creates great questions in our life. Now, clearly from the beginning of what Jesus was saying, he kind of gave him a dig, and he said, some of you had crossed this lake just because you're looking for the next meal. And not that that's necessarily bad in our lives. Provision is a good thing. We host this meal because we want to provide in some sense for our neighborhood. But in some way, Jesus is saying there's something deeper than our own guts. There's something deeper than our own bodily satisfaction in this world. And as I said earlier, that ditch of apathy, sometimes we're okay getting to that base level of just moving to the next meal or the next hit or the next thing that feels good. And in some way, Jesus is drawing them into the conversation, drawing them into thinking more outside of just thinking with their guts, even though Jesus in himself, as the bread of life, wants to be the provider of those things. And there's this bit about Moses, this bit about manna, and this is really crucial. This is a nod to the story that's very important for the people listening to him, and I think really relevant to our stories as well. He nods to the story of the people of Israel being in the desert and needing to rely daily on God sending bread from heaven. As I was reflecting on this and reflecting on what it means for Jesus to be the bread of life, it occurs to me that most of our existence here on earth, though it might not be in a literal desert, is sort of a desert experience. I don't know about you, but a lot of times in life, I am doing a lot of wandering. There's a lot of wanting in my heart. There's not satisfaction all the time. And sometimes the circumstances of life, because of the heat of the moment or the circumstances of life, dry up the things that I care about. And so I don't often get all the things that I'm wanting. I sometimes can really resonate with being in a desert experience and wandering and needing leadership and leading leadership and guidance. And so in some sense, Jesus responding to them in this way and saying that his manna is better, his bread is better, is saying he's sort of a new Moses, a new provision for them in this life that can be very much like a wilderness and a desert. I don't know if you can resonate with your life feeling like a wilderness sometimes. And then there's this bit about work. They're saying, okay, well, what's the work that we have to do? And I thought about that before, and I remembered a moment in my life where I, for a season of life, just poured everything I had into my work, hoping for satisfaction. And part of my work is real estate. And there was this moment where I had sold a property, and I stared at the check that I made from that. And it is the most amount of money that I've ever made in my life. And I stared at the check, and I felt this like surge of pride and enjoyment and excitement. But I tell you what, not even 3 seconds later, there was this surge of dread. There was a surge of, what do I do with this now? Immediately after gaining that provision, I was looking for satisfaction. I thought that would be a moment of arrival, of ultimate satisfaction or something like that. At least a part of me was. But in that moment came even a moment of dread. Like, I can't lose this money. I can't do this thing. And so in this invitation for Jesus to invite them to work, or this ask to work, it says, what work, how can we achieve? How can we earn this satisfaction or this bread that you're talking about? And he responds to him in this way. He says, the work of God is this, to believe in the one that God has sent, essentially to believe in him. I've noticed in my life how I work to achieve things that I think will give me satisfaction, only to find that the things themselves don't hold the satisfaction I'm craving in the midst of them. As I look at my life, I look at the things that are most deeply meaningful to me, the things that propel me, the things that I'm most proud of and passionate about, the things that bring me to tears, the people, experiences, and passions that I would be crushed if I lost. Trusting in Jesus has brought those things. Jesus' invitation to be the bread of life is an invitation to provide for us in our everyday life, but it's an invitation to be our leader and our guide through the wilderness place. It's an invitation not to achieve through the things that we do, but it's an invitation to participate and join with him and experience the joy of the things that he can cultivate in our life if we trust in him. When I look at my life and I look at the things that I hold most dear, there's one common denominator, and that's Jesus. He's the source. He is the satisfaction behind the things that I was craving satisfaction from. You know, when I look at that and I look at the things that I hold most dear, I would be a fool if I thought they brought me satisfaction in and of themselves. The invitation to see Jesus as the bread of life is the invitation that he has something deeper for us, that he has a life that's deeper than the next hit, the next thing in our life. He has an invitation for us to a life in relationship with him, a life journeying with him to cultivate things that he wants for us in our life, things that will bring us true joy, true satisfaction, not because they in and of themselves hold that satisfaction, but because we join him along the journey to those things, and he himself is our satisfaction. So I just want to land us again on this question. What's your source of satisfaction? Where are you at in your life? Do you feel resonance with that apathy, with that chronic discontentment? Have you been disappointed? Maybe tonight, Jesus is trying to ask the question to you, where does your satisfaction come from? What we love to do around tables is to just continue the conversation just by simply asking, what stood out to you? We'd love to hear your story, your perspective from the Jesus story or from anything that I said. And so the simple question we ask is, what stood out to you, or what difference would this make in your life? And so we invite you to turn to the person next to you and share about that if you'd like to. We'd ask you to just hold it to 2 minutes, so if someone wants to share, they can share. And maybe you'll get in a great conversation and learn something new, and even have a chance to share your own perspective on what stood out to you tonight. So let's move towards tables and towards each other and ask those questions. What stood out to you? And what difference do you think this could make in your life?